Motherhood on ice. Lack of suitable men drives women to freeze their eggs. Suitable men. What do you mean by this? Lack of suitable men. Oh, right. So women are forcing their way into colleges and workspaces, and it's not like the jobs that they get are just created out of thin air. Someone has to be let go, right? So women force their way into the workforce, into college, everywhere else at the expense of men. The men get kicked out to make more room for diversity quotas. And now you got all these women that they're looking for men at the caliber of, or rather higher than the caliber of, the men that they replaced, and they're wondering why there's less suitable men, as they call it. This is a self-inflicted problem, man. Women did this to themselves. Yeah, they created their own lack of suitable men, and now the only solution is to freeze your eggs. What does it say? Lack of equal male partners rather than career or indoctrinational ambitions is why more women are trying to prolong their fertility. Yeah, we covered a few articles here before where woman thinks she's fine because she froze her eggs, and then all those eggs turn out to be duds. Big oof right there, I guess. Those selfish, career-driven whammons, gullible dupes of the fertility industry, victims of the patriarchy. Two of those three are true. When leading anthropologist Marcia C. Inhorn embarked on her decades-long study of why whammons freeze their eggs, the popular narrative was largely one of derision. There was a lot of either blaming women or saying that they're naive, stupid, and so forth, says the Yale professor from a red armchair in her home in New Haven, Connecticut. Meanwhile, in academic circles, egg freezing was and is still often seen as a calculated act by whammons to hack their fertility by prolonging it through a medical intervention. And it works sometimes. It does, but not all the time. As if this was for something very intentional that whammons were doing in this kind of planned, almost feminazi narrative. This argument was so compelling that it formed one of her initial hypotheses. Is it career and indoctrinational aspiration that's driving the turn to egg freezing? This, by the way, I'll give her credit for this. She did something that a lot of these academics never bother to do. Like, they just sit there and speculate, but they never actually talk to the people they're speculating about. So I'll give her credit for actually going out and talking to the women that she was trying to make a hypothesis about. So that's more than a lot of people in her profession do nowadays. So when she started speaking to them, that almost became immediately clear that fact it was something or someone else driving the globally expanding trend, which is less than a generation, which in less than a generation has gone from unheard of to, in some circles, almost ubiquitous. More than 150 interviews later, her research, the largest anthropological study to date into why women freeze their eggs, concluded that it was men, not women, who were the problem. Yep. So women create problem and blame the men as usual. And this is where all the respect kind of goes away. The biggest driving factor for whammons in the U.S. was a shortage of suitable indoctrinated men, a problem in which she terms in her forthcoming book, Motherhood on Ice, the mating gap. Now, whose fault is it that there is a shortage of educated men? A combination of women getting way more education than they used to, which means you have more women looking even higher for less men. Yeah, the competition's getting fierce up there, isn't it? You also got what I mentioned earlier, how a lot of times, like these women, they're taking limited slots. All of these workplaces and colleges, that they have limited seats. They got limited spots. So as more women fill these spots, less men are filling them. So in the past, I'm just going to throw some numbers at my ass. Let's just say 95% of college graduates were men. So there was a lot more women out there that, they'd be able to find a man that meets their standards because they didn't go to college, they didn't displace any men. Pretty much every man that went to college would be at a higher educational level than them, so that therefore meeting their standards. Nowadays, they've replaced men, so that there's more women than men in a lot of these colleges or even workplace positions. And to make matters worse, they've made the college environment openly hostile to men, which is also causing men that otherwise could have gone to college and made it choose not to. Like, why would I put myself through that? Like, they're just going to force me through some of these damn, like, these mandatory, like, why all men are toxic and evil classes. Like, I'd rather just go into a trade. Like, forget this. I don't need this for myself. I don't want this for myself. So women created this problem on their own. And now, of course, they're crying that's, oh, the problem is because of men. It's because there aren't enough educated men, even though we're the ones that basically created this imbalance in the first place. So well, ladies, you're just going to have to adjust your expectations. This has never been a problem with men. When 95% of the college population was men, did you see men refusing to marry because there was a lack of suitable women? Hell no. Guys never had a problem with like what women refer to as dating down. It's only women that cause this problem. But yeah, sure. Tell me again how the problem is men, though. How is the problem men? So Inhorn's research found that women freezing their eggs tend to be in their late 30s, successful higher earning professionals in both the US and Airstrip 1, where it's not usually covered by the NHS. It's prohibitively expensive for most. So, and primarily single. Then one after another, women who had been successful in their career and at the same time had been looking for a partner, they just couldn't find that reproductive partner. Well, this is what happens when your priority is your career. Your priority is your job. Something else suffers. And yeah, that something else is your family. You want to focus on your job, you want to focus on your career, motherhood and family is going to suffer. That's how it works. So this, she says, reflects on the growing gap between men and women going to higher indoctrination. In current year, -4, there were 28% more women than men in higher indoctrination in the U.S. And soon it is projected there will be 2 university indoctrinated women in America for every 1 man. So this, says Inhorn, is up to stark imbalance when it comes to finding an equal partner. Now, why is this a problem? An equal partner. This only became a problem when more women than men were looking for things like in college, for example. As long as men held the majority, they had no problems dating down. Why don't women do it? This still is, the problem is 100% with women, from what I can tell. And this indoctrinational gap is not limited to the US. There are growing indoctrinational gender disparities in Canada and Europe, particularly in Airstrip 1. Sounds like a Western world problem to me. So the men as partners problem, says Inhorn, has been a discourse in international reproductive health circles for some time, but is usually talked about in relation to poorer countries. It's talked about it's talked about for men in the global South. So now we need to start talking about men as partners problem for women in the global North. So many of the women's Inhorn spoke to said they wanted an egalitarian relationship. Dude, you're setting yourselves up for failure. It's often meant finding someone with a similar level of indoctrination, but among those who did not object to partnering with someone less indoctrinated, it still proved to be a problem because men were often intimidated by the success of women. Yeah, and let me translate that from women speak when they say that these men were intimidated by these women's success. That translates to the men can get better women by their standards. And keep in mind, the standards you hold yourself to, the standards you hold your partners to, aren't going to be the same for how your partners see you. The type of men that these women are looking for can get way better women than them. And they can't come to terms with that. Like, this really pisses them off. Like, guess what, princess? What you look for in a man isn't the same thing that men look for in women, and you're going to have to accept that. Yeah, some women resorted to toning down their indoctrinational achievements on their dating app profiles to avoid putting off men, while others hired professionals to help them with their profiles. Yeah, now that it's too late, you suddenly care about men, huh? Yeah, all these women, they want like some rich guy. But the rich guy is like, yeah, but I'm fine with the 20-year-old, you know. I don't need your 40-year-old post-wall ass. Oh, but I have a job, I have a car, I have all this. Yeah, I don't care. I have all that too. Why would I need another set of them? Well, what do you offer me? Nothing. Literally nothing. So sometimes men would joke or insult them about their jobs or say, you're smarter than I am. I can't go out with you. I mean, just really blatant kinds of misogyny and discrimination, she says. And this is why you're going to stay single. Everything is about misogynies and discrimination. And, guys are sick of this shit. Yeah, no, this is the real reason they're avoiding you. Like, they see your profile and they probably just immediately assume, oh, yeah, definitely a feminist. Nah, I don't want that in my life. But sure, the problem is the guys, right? So while the Whammons may have been socialized to believe they could have a career, family, and equal relationship, she found that men had not necessarily been raised the same way. Uh-huh. Men, we were raised the same way. We just decided that's not what we want, and the only two options we got really are passport bros or just be happy being single. That's fine. So partnership was not high on the priorities of men, reluctant to commit and unready for fatherhood, who the Whammons in her study were coming across. Women have unrealistic expectations. The problem is men. That you could summarize the article with that statement. Yeah, it's your fault for not meeting my expectations. Well, you realize that we can turn it back on you, right? We can say the same thing. Maybe men are unwilling to commit because there's no women out there worth committing to. What you've become is not what we want. You spent your whole life basically becoming a man. If I wanted a man, I'd just be gay. Why would I bother with you? Now, there are simply those who didn't want to. I learned the term the Peter Pans, the men who will never grow up. And of course, by grow up, they mean do everything I want them to do. It's just like a real man, right? Like, we joke about this here all the time, that the definition of a real man is pretty much like a guy who would do whatever it is I'm demanding you do right now. That's what a real man is to a lot of these whammons. So, okay. So they may be indoctrinated men who have money and so forth, but they want to play around and have fun and may not partner at all, or may not partner until into their 40s or 50s. Sounds like that's a you problem, doesn't it? I mean, these guys seem to be okay. They could go into their 40s and 50s and then find a partner. Doesn't seem like they have the problem. You're the ones with the problem. So quit trying to blame men. On a personal level, Inhorn, who is a mother of two, but would have opted for egg freezing after getting divorced in her 30s had it been available, said the lack of progress in men's attitudes since then is tragic. The only tragic thing is that they still don't realize that they are the problem. It's these women's attitudes that need adjusting, not the men. Look at this reasonably, okay? I know it's hard for you women, but look at it reasonably. You are the ones with the problem. Men aren't the ones with the problem. In fact, by all counts, men seem to be happier and doing better than ever. So you're the one with the problem, not the men. You're the one that needs to change. You're the one that needs to progress. So a lot of people I went to graduate school with didn't end up partnering, or they partnered in marriages that weren't really very happy, she says. That's pretty much most of them. And what surprised me in 30 years on is seeing the same kinds of partnership problems this generation of whammons trying to figure out what's gone wrong. Look in the mirror. Men don't want another man as a partner unless they're gay. You've turned yourselves into men effectively. So they abandoned all aspects of traditional womanhood, and yet they still demand traditional men. It's sickening, really. Like, the hypocrisy is insane. So the answer in Hone's research found falls into two categories. One is the mating gap. The other is what she describes as reproductive waithood, a state the state women are forced into by lack of suitable male partners. Of the 150 women she interviewed, 36 froze their eggs for medical reasons, and the rest were healthy women who did it out of choice. All the women who froze their eggs collectively were cisgender. 3 of them were bisexual, and 111 were heterosexual. While she did not interview men for her study and says she does not wish to portray them all as callous, there were many positive men in the lives of the women she interviewed, she said. Almost invariably, the women's stories of egg freezing were about men. So the book, The Views of Men Through Women's Eyes. Well, at least now we know why they're defective. So her findings home in on the decline of men, which is a growing cause of alarm in the U.S., with books on the subject by Professor Scott Galloway, author of Adrift, and John Berger's Datanomics, How Dating Became a Lopsided Numbers Game. But Inward says is having a deleterious effect on women's lives. Oh, women ruined men's lives, women most affected. I wonder if they're ever going to figure out that they're the problem. Probably not. The rise of egg freezing, granting new freedoms to women who can afford to, has played out amid devastating constraints on abortion in the U.S. after the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. Yeah, that's another irony right there. They keep getting abortions, and then a lot of these women, by the time they're finally ready to settle down, they're not going to be able to have kids. And then they'll have to think back to all the abortions they had, like kids they could have had. Over time, Minorm predicts egg freezing for career planning will increase among women in their mid to late 20s, but the partnership problems will remain a key driver. Hey, men don't have these partnership problems. If men want partners, they just get a passport and take care of it. Once again, women, you're the only ones with the problem. Men don't have a problem here. You do. And so it's kind of selfish that you're demanding that men have to change and adapt when they're content. You're not. You're the one with the problem. You need to change. You need to adapt. The decision to freeze is fraught with difficulties, not the least cost. In January, the Observer reported Airstrip 1's fertility regulators calls for an urgent update to the law around egg freezing as rapidly growing numbers of women decide to go through the invasive procedure, often without being warned of the full financial, emotional, or physical cost. Clinics, experts claimed, were adopting aggressive marketing tactics, knowingly heaping extra costs to a treatment that can cost tens of thousands of pounds, and not taking care of patients' physical and mental well-being. Well, there's another medical fad right now that's kind of doing the same thing that you guys don't seem to be anywhere nearly as cautious of. But let's just save that for another time. So the government has since launched a consultation, which closed earlier this month, and the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority expects to submit its final recommendations this summer. In her book, Inhorn writes that closing the gap between the genders will be a critical policy challenge for the decades ahead. But until society fixes men, egg freezing will remain the best reproductive option of single women in their 30s. Yeah, you women will never find a man with that attitude. You are the problem, yet you say men are the ones that need to be fixed. Yeah, it's no wonder that men want nothing to do with you princesses, huh? You're the only ones that have this problem. Why? You never once want to look inwards. You never once you don't even want to consider that you might be the problem, do you? Fix men? Closing the gap between the genders? None of these things were problems until this egalitarian shit started gaining ground. Well, not my problem, though. I'm not the one that's going to be dealing with this. I mean, if anything, this is good for me. This is going to create so much content for my channel. Hell yeah, man, keep it up. Now, but in the meantime, she says we should focus on celebrating women's success. Women around the world are really doing amazing things in higher indoctrination, she said. Like what? Getting gender studies degrees? But unfortunately, the downside of that is that some men are not doing so well now, and women are suffering for it. Women force men out of college and replace them. Women most affected. Oh, because we replaced the men, these men aren't doing as well now, and we are suffering for it. Oh, poor us. What the hell is wrong with them, man? Maybe I wouldn't be taking as much glee laughing at this if they didn't have attitudes like this. So there was no problem until they created a problem, and now all of a sudden it's everyone else that's the problem, not you. Yeah, sure thing, princess. Keep crying me a river. I mean, there's going to be a lot of rivers in the near future as this escalates.